So, I mean, one of the concepts that I teach now is something called the flow funnel, which looks at the three different parts of ourself. We've got a physical body that moves through time and space. We have a mind that directs and receives thought and has ideas and belief systems. And we have an emotional state that is the container, the landscape against which all of that happens.
All right, guys, what is up? Welcome to episode 111 with Dan Mangena. This one is about abundance, manifesting abundance in your life, abundance DNA, as Dan calls it. And abundance could be wealth, financial, or health would be another definition of wealth in life, and happiness, gratitude. Of course, gratitude is the gateway to abundance. So before we dive in with Daniel and abundance and what Daniel's up to, a couple things. One, thank you as always for being here. I super appreciate your time and your trust with me and our guests and the information we're bringing you. And hopefully that is all in service to things that benefit you in your life and your pursuits of continuous improvement, of mastery. And the second thing, really to that end, I love bringing information, guests, exposure, new practices, all that to benefit you guys. And sometimes that shows up in terms of products. So a couple of things I've come across just very recently and started using that I would love to share. This is coming from a place simply of personal enjoyment and wanting to spread that in case it benefits you. No financial interest in any of these or that sort of thing on the business side. One, shaving. I don't know about you, but I've always disliked shaving. The process, it's uncomfortable. And I never really liked the business model, right? These massive corporations, Gillette or what have you, that charge a ton. And it seems like this plastic, cheap little device, and you use it a little bit and it goes bad and you throw it in the trash and it's filling up the landfill and super expensive. Luckily, some companies have come along and disrupted that price side, the cost side of that model, which I love that. But it's still the same old product and it's same old process. So I recently started using, there's a company that was on, I think, Shark Tank. They're called Supply, if I remember right. So if you look at the website, he kind of tells the story, same deal, right? It's a disruption story coming from his own personal need or personal dissatisfaction, solving sort of all the problems I just mentioned. And if you look at it, it looks like maybe he CAD designed it and they craft this thing out of plastic, but it's actually like this heavy, really nice quality feeling razor or razor device, if you will. And then it uses a straight blade, a single blade insert. That these things are, they date back like a century, the design that fit into this razor. So he's sort of solved the landfill problem. They're recyclable and they're abundant and super cheap. Like you can get a lifetime supply of these razors for probably $60, $100, something like that. But more so in using them for it, really, the one blade has lasted quite a while now, for about the last month. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it, to the process, but extremely sharp, sort of smooth shave, no problems whatsoever with it, and really enjoying the process, sort of pain-free. I think better quality shave, more intentional shave, and just loving it, loving the process and loving the product. I would highly recommend it. Supply, I think you can find their website. It's not .com, it's something similar, supply.ie or something along those lines. Just search for Supply Razor, and definitely recommend giving that a try. I assume the same would probably be the case for ladies, but if it can shave your face well as a guy, probably applies to legs and all that good stuff too. Second thing, if you foam roll, or you like something like a Theragun massage device. Theragun, a friend of mine, Dave Lowry, just turned me onto this thing. Theragun is making other sort of foam roller, foam ball type of equipment that also have the embedded vibrating technology. So this foam roller that I was just holding up here for the guys watching on YouTube, it's your typical foam roller, but then you turn it on and you can adjust the vibration level. It's like a Theragun built into the foam roller. Same with they've got a little, the foam roller is called the Wave, and they've got a ball, I forget what it's called. Same idea as like rolling on a lacrosse ball, but again, internal Theragun. Game changer. And I love sort of stacking things, right? You don't have to do the foam roller and then the Theragun or vice versa. It's all in one. Awesome. So on to today's podcast, 111 with Dan Mangena. I mentioned it's all about sort of abundance. what Dan does, I mean, incredible story, undiagnosed Asperger's, suicidal ideation, all that turned into a very intentional sort of self-development process for himself and programming or reprogramming his mind. So this one feels a lot to me like, if you're familiar, a combination of NLP and Dr. Joe Dispenza. But I've been through not only the discussion with Dan, but a lot of his material. I really like it. I like his abundance meditations. I like his approach. I like his explanation of thoughts and emotions and actions and body, mind, all that in combination. And the way it sort of shows up is he talks about reality and what reality is, how we create our reality through a combination of our environment and our emotions and how those interact. And we sort of get into the discussion of what is reality and quantum entanglement, fun stuff like that. And of course, as always, just some fun discussion on the topics du jour and challenges in the world today. So awesome discussion. Look forward to it and bringing it to you guys. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, or do enjoy it. So jump right in now. Episode 111 with Dan Mangena. We'll do it again. So today it's my pleasure to introduce Daniel Mangena. Welcome to the show, Daniel. Pleasure to have you. Thank you for being here. I know we talked off air, making an effort to get your name right, and excited for a conversation today that's just going to be a lot of fun. I know you are really out there just serving the community, serving the world, and dedicating your time here in service to us and the audience today. So thank you again so much, and thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation and to diving in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we were talking a little bit offline about where you grew up in East London. Some viewers or listeners will hear it in the accent. Sure. But I'm excited to learn more about your journey because on this show we talk around these themes of life's journey and success that comes in the trials and tribulations of failure and the scrapes and the bruises, the blood, sweat, and tears, as you said off air, the mistakes, all that, the formula really. I mean, we should embrace that because it is the formula for ultimately growing and fulfillment and what we like to call success. But I know in everything you do out there as an author, as a philanthropist these days, as an entrepreneur multiple times over, I know part of your life story started with some health setbacks very early on. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and how it created the platform for who you are today and what you've done in the world.
Yeah. So again, thanks for having me, and come on, you underdogs.
Exactly.
See, I'm undiagnosed with Asperger's until the age of 27. So I spent basically an entire life suffering from general anxiety, severe social anxiety, a lot of loneliness and stuff that evolved from that. And I actually just ended up spending a lot of my time in books. And dreaming and when I think about it now, actually, there's probably this whole thing of, I'm gonna make you see who I am, right? Oh, you don't want to be my friend? Okay, well, I'm gonna make you want to be my friend. Do you know why? Because you don't need me. And so a big part of my identity ended up being around being useful and achieving, because it made for less loneliness for the most part. And there was a lot of success. I made my first million 19, promptly lost it, not too long into being 20, dusted myself off, went and did it again. I think I lasted about 18 months that time before I lost it all again. Ended up in a very dark place, suicidal, thinking I didn't have any value anymore because the illusion that was built around my worthiness and what that was built on, the house of sand, like built upon the sand, was gone. And I ended up building myself back up from that, thankfully. And the work that I do now has come from the lessons that I learned from that rebuilding and integrating. As I shared with you, I got into personal development really young. I was reading books like Think and Grow Rich and Psycho-Cybernetics as a teenager, and they supported me in creating. But, there's a difference between learning something and knowing something. And I was able to apply, but application doesn't need to sustained application, right? 90% of lottery winners end up exactly where they were or worse within 5 years. I lasted a few months or whatever because I didn't have those other components. And it's really been a journey of understanding what those other components are, the other pieces of the puzzle that need to come together, embracing the journey and all that comes with it, and the polarity. That was that second part of the journey, and it's been a part of what I now get to share with people around the world.
Thank you for sharing that, and just the transparency and the honesty, especially around the not only the make it lose it thing, which seems so common and is part of the growth process, but more so on the personal side, the darkness, the suicidal ideation, or maybe even attempts. I just lost a very good friend that way here a couple months ago. It's a tragic ripple effect energetically to so many people left around. I mean, I know some of what you do talk about is that dark place, and maybe how you got through it, and what you learned out of that. Is there something to share there that might benefit the audience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, gallows humor incoming. For me, the funny thing is that I didn't try to get myself out of that place. I accidentally overanalyzed myself out of the attempt, and then accidentally reprogram myself out of the desire. It wasn't conscious. And it's actually one of the principles that really, really speaks to the fact, I had looking at that cheeky flag behind you, I think you'll understand this. My TEDx that I did on the topic got censored. They refused to publish it because I did a TED talk called What Suicide Taught Me About Life. And it really does, if I say myself, really quite powerfully speak to the fact that it doesn't matter what you're thinking that you want. It doesn't matter what you're intending to go to. Your environment's going to be programming your mind and reinforcing or disrupting whatever's going on internally. And the fact is that the unconscious mind is in charge of our daily function as much as 97% of the time. A good 97% of the actions, habits, behaviors, and choices that we're making are running on an unconscious program, but that program doesn't come from anywhere. It's continually being reinforced or disrupted by our environment. So here's the thing. I sat there completely feeling I was useless, so much so that I really believed that if I attempted a suicide, I'd fail, and I didn't want to be the loser who couldn't even take their own life. That's literally what the pause was. And again, I have to be deeply grateful for my Asperger's, because I really do believe it was the way that my brain functions, that it goes through things step by step, and I don't make impulsive decisions. I literally don't have the physical wiring in my brain to make impulsive decisions. That led me to going through that thought process. And actually, the journey that I went on that pulled me out of the darkness began with the intention of, I need to work out what's wrong with me and why I'm such a loser so that I can pull off my suicide successfully. That's what happened. And I went off and spent the next couple of years doing nothing but reading books, studying tapes. I learned and transliterate Arabic and Hebrew so I could go into ancient texts and studying ancient people's stories, because I wanted to BS test all this stuff that I'd been reading for the past few years that had led me to being this arrogant little toe rag that thought he knew everything, that now suddenly realized he didn't. And in that process, and it wasn't, I mean, the time that I remember consciously waking up and realizing that my life had changed, I got back from a really fun trip with my cousin to Thailand in 2015. So this is about 5 years later, something like that. And I realized I'd had a really good time. The business that I built up by then had functioned while I was away. I took one call with the lead member of my team for 10 minutes. The rest of the time I was getting drunk and hanging out with hot girls on the beach. And I was happy. I was happy that I was enjoying life, and I hadn't been in the darkness. I didn't remember the last time I'd been in the darkness. I said, wow. And it was that time that I actually said that the book that I'd been writing for a different reason, I wanted to sit and write for a new reason. And I really wanted to sit down and systemize or look at the process that I'd gone through to get to that place. And it started with me saying, I want to delusion myself so I can pull this off. But the inputs and the environment that I bombarded my mind with was aligned with life, was aligned with positivity, was aligned with creating. And so I was in shape. I was practicing jiu-jitsu. I was going and working out in the gym. I had great relationships with my family, had been healed. And again, I was happy, I was fulfilled, and I was doing something that I loved in my life at the time. And it wasn't by choice. It's because I programmed myself accidentally to do so.
Yeah, quick story about this, the cheeky flag behind me, as you call it. So it's handmade by some guys up in Buffalo, New York. They're called Buffalo Reclaimed, reclaimed wood, and they hand make it. And so when I ordered it with the old version of the flag, the 13 stars, the 1776 version.
Mhm.
And I just saw a quote a few minutes ago. It's something along the lines of, love your country, but distrust the government. What we're being programmed with these days is very different than what the founding
Mhm.
fathers were attempting to
Agreed.
program 200 plus years
Agreed.
ago.
Agreed. Agreed.
Uh,
Agreed. And I think it's a shame. I mean, I watched I don't want to get too political and get you black banned or whatever, but
yeah, right.
I just think it's a shame that people are so scared of their ideas being challenged.
Hmm.
You want to be a liberal? Be a liberal, right? You want to vote for that party? Vote for that party. You want to be a libertarian? Whatever you want to be. I think it's crazy that we're so focused on other people being forced as a moral decision to believe that we believe, even if the basis of that moral decision is flawed or out and out lies, as we've seen time and time again, instead of me focusing on enjoying the process of me living a life that's based on the ideals that I hold. Right? We saw the same thing with whether or not you're going to take different medical procedures. The ideas behind forcing people to do it were flawed. Now, I'm not going to speak as to whether there's conspiracy in that, because we don't even need to go into the conspiracy thing. It's very, very simple. Even when you look at the juxtaposition of the ideas that are coming out now in relationship to what women can do with their bodies, it's like the same argument is being used in a distorted way in both ends. Like, you can't tell me what to do with my body, but you were just telling me what to do with my body. And again, I think that a woman should be able to do what she wants with her body. That's my personal stance, but I don't push that on anybody. And I don't expect anybody to push their ideas on me. I'm spending more time living a life in integrity to the ideals that I hold, rather than forcing people to adhere to the ideals that I hold. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes 100% sense to me. I think about it a lot as a father. I mentioned to you,
Mm-hmm.
I have a young man in the house here, and so he's still in school, which is,
Mm-hmm.
in my view of school, learning how to learn.
And that's
And
being attacked now as well.
it is, and so we've had to make
Mm-hmm.
some choices around what that schooling is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I come back frequently for myself to the old saying that none of us is smarter than all of us, which
Mm-hmm.
comes through discord and
Mm-hmm.
disagreement and debate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
being able to hold opposing ideas at the
And
same
expansive
time.
conversations around those ideas.
Right, exactly. And when we
Mm-hmm.
just try to go for uniformity and conformity, we lose
Mm-hmm.
that learning opportunity.
And I think as well, I mean, I've been following quite closely because I'm finding the Floridian governor quite fascinating to watch, and watching the way that he creates such disruption with the choices and the way that he's doing things. It's even like, so, I mean, full disclosure, I'm a heterosexual man, that's me. I love the ladies, that's what I'm into. Never had any thoughts about drifting to the other side and mixing it up. I know people that have, and whatever. I've got gay friends, I've got straight friends, don't have any trans friends or whatever. But it's like, personally, I don't understand why we're so concerned about what other people consensually do with their body parts, right?
Right.
But at the same time, I don't understand why there's such an obsession with trying to force feed the choice about what people are going to do with their body parts later on in life, at a time in life when they're not even really sure what life means.
Right.
Does that make sense? And then that gets turned into a homophobic discussion, when actually there's the possibility, and I can't speak to what's going on in the mind of people who are opposed to the discussion. And of course, there are going to be some people who are doing it from a homophobic perspective. But at the end of the day, it just makes sense that if we don't believe that someone is old enough to give their consent to have sex until the age of 18, then why are we thinking it's okay at less than half that we're having them make choices and enter into mental discourse around ideas, concepts, and choices that relate to something that we can't even make a decision about until we're 18? Does that make sense?
It's what you're saying is rational. The whole concept makes no sense. So yeah, I'm following you.
And again, like, and I'm not like racist people that are like, oh, I can't be racist. I've got a mate at work that's black or whatever. Like, I literally do have people that I love and hold dear, that are all kinds of spectrum in terms of where their sexual orientation is. And yet we can't have these conversations because we've started to place these distorted moral judgments around simply having discourse about what a parent gets to choose, because that's what freedom is, gets to choose that their child experiences and has conversations about. Now, if a child comes in and says, hey, I want to have a talk about this, then I believe that a parent should have the right to be involved in that discussion and what it looks like, regardless of what discussion that looks like. Even if the parent is homophobic, well, they have a right as a parent not to be told by someone else that this is how they have to deal with the situation. I would hope that they would still love their child and they'd support them through the choice about what they wanted to do with their sexuality. And yet someone else telling them this is what they have to do, and at the same time saying you can't tell another person what they do, right. The whole thing just becomes a bit nonsensical for me, if that makes sense.
It really does. And if I really pan back, as you mentioned very quickly, unfortunately, there are so many examples right now, and you mentioned several. But if I really pan back, I know part of what you do, what you've experienced, what you've wandered into in your growth journey, as you said, you sort of got there accidentally. You have a book, The Money Game, right? And it's about manifesting wealth and abundance, I think well beyond just money, right? Abundance in all facets of life. And so when I pan back from these topics, or the lack of willingness to have some discussion and disagreement around topics, it just strikes me as a scarcity mindset
100%.
Versus an abundance
it's
mindset.
Fear-based. It's
Fear-based.
I don't have sufficient confidence in my viewpoint for it to stand up to the test of interrogation, and for me to enter into a healthy debate with another who may have an insight that might show me that my stance isn't all that true. So, for example, I love to be the dumbest, poorest, least successful and accomplished person in any room I walk into. Right. I don't mind being in the middle because I can learn from both ends, but I certainly don't want to be the smartest, the richest, or the most accomplished person in any room. Anytime that's the case, I want to move out of it. Why? Because I'm open to being challenged and I want to grow, right? Is that always comfortable? No, it's not always comfortable. Is it always nice? No, it's always nice. It's not always pleasant, right? I've been into rooms where nobody wants to talk to you because you are the dumbest, least accomplished person in the room. But if you're just going into rooms where everybody holds the same ideas as you, then how are you going to be open to the possibility that maybe those ideas aren't correct? Or maybe there's some substance or some flavor that might be added to those ideas you have, which may be quite contrary to the ideas that you've been holding. And when we look at ideas such as the core ideals given in the Constitution, did it leave out Black people? Yes, it was a very different time. Are there some changes that could be made to bring it up to speed in terms of certain social dynamics that we have now? Yes, but the core ideas transcend time and don't need to be shifted. And if we could just look at some of those core ideas and start to reflect on them abundantly and fearlessly as we hold our own ideas with the freedom to do so, I think a lot of the discourse that we have that's just damaging and toxic would end. A lot of the disagreements that actually have us busy dealing with that. I mean, we're talking about stuff like that while the economy is going into a tailspin, right? Literally, financial apocalypse is being held off by blaming, I'm not going to get into too much more politics, by blaming other people doing other things in the world, instead of accepting responsibility that there is a cost of you just printing money senselessly. Instead of actually just taking real economic decisions. It's just crazy. It's crazy all around, Michael.
And we're not even having an honest conversation about that either, about where we are financially or root causes.
What do they call it? Putin's price hike, they were calling it.
Everything needs to have a blame. It needs to have an antagonist. But, I love your point about growth. I think is always uncomfortable. And not wanting to be in a room where you're just getting confirmation bias from people that are all sort of at the same level as you. They're not putting you in that uncomfortable place where you might change your mind or you learn something new to grow. And again, I know we're down a rabbit hole here, but this to me is a very scary thing about technology, whether it's a web feed or whether it's social media that's picking up on, what you like to see, what you like to do, what you enjoy, and just feeding you more of the same. right? So you are getting just a very two-dimensional view of the world.
And I mean, is it some deep dark plan by the Illuminati, the child brain sucking Illuminati that live in Hollywood? Maybe, I don't know. But there are so many things that we're not really going to know. And instead of fixating on what we don't know, we can fixate on what we can do about what we do know. What we do know is, if you're just spending time with people, regardless of where you're doing it, you're not going to grow. And if you are committed to growth, then grow. And if you're not committed to growth, then okay, just accept that, I'm a lemming that doesn't want to grow and wants to stay in the same place. And I'm not throwing any shade at that, but then do that peacefully and stay with your lemmings, and you guys hang out in Lemmingville. Don't then get upset with someone else who does want to have a challenging conversation, that does want to expand. I personally, as a rule of thumb, when someone holds particular ideas that they hold senselessly, and if I acid test that, litmus test that a little bit, and they don't demonstrate that they're open to expansive conversation, I just nod and smile. I nod and smile. I don't go down, because what's the point? I'm going to waste my energy.
That's right.
That could be spent on me, spent on my kids, spent on the people that I get to serve, having a conversation with someone that's very, very happy being in Lemmingville. Okay, be in Lemmingville. Again, no shade. The world needs lemmings too. But I think that it really comes down to really having clarity on, who do I want to be? What kind of life do I want to live? And am I open to have honest conversations about even that with myself, if not with others?
So let's talk a bit about that, about energy, about realizing a vision for the type of life you want to live. And you particularly, Daniel, you're doing it. You're not in Lemmingville. You're doing it differently. So some might say living the dream. So you're based out of Cabo, Los Cabos, Mexico, Baja South. How is that? So you've gone the expat route.
Yeah.
You were born in London. You've, I believe, lived in the States. Now you're living in Mexico.
For a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I came here for 3 days and didn't leave.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, and I want everyone to remember, I was reading books that built the foundation of the conversations I'm able to have and the way that I'm able to think as a teenager. If I'm 38 right now. If someone just brought these ideas to me now, and I had just finished my degree, gone to work, gone to church every Sunday, married that girl, had those 2 kids, and gotten that job, I understand that it would probably be more challenging for me to hear some of these ideas, because I'd have this neural pathway makeup that was hardwired to receive only a certain type of information. So anybody who's finding that you're coming up against people who aren't listening to you, who, whether it's, a loved one or a family member or a co-worker, remember that the wiring in the brain literally is probably inhibiting them from being able to hear these ideas, and that your energy is probably best served by being an example for what freedom looks like, an example for what expansion looks like, an example for what mastery looks like. So for me, I'm really do my best to be deeply in integrity with what I teach and what I share, and to be an example, because how we show up and what we're an example of, speaking about energy, is going to be felt and experienced by people before I open my mouth, right? If I was full of it, you might not know, but there'd be this kind of niggling like thing there, right? And I think even in terms of the impact and the way that I do get to touch people's lives comes from the fact that there's no airs and graces here. My life doesn't have no bumps. There are bumps in the road. There have been people that actually have said, how can you tell me how to live my life? Your life's not perfect. Nobody's life is perfect. We all have our stuff. But I do have the resources to navigate those speed bumps. And I do use the same tools that I share with people to move through those in order to continue to live a life that can be dreamy, which is something that we all can achieve. So the fearlessness to walk into a different country that speaks a language that I've got a bit of a grasp on, and to say, do you know what, I like it here, I'm going to stay. Deal with yourself with grace if you wouldn't do the same thing, but look to, is that the kind of fearlessness you want? Or maybe you want something different. What is it that you want? What's a dream life to you? And what can you do today to move towards it?
Love that. Do you have a sense for describing how life feels or looks differently in the country you're living in. To me, international travel is an amazing gift in
Hmm.
opening different perspectives and worldview.
Hmm.
I mean, Mexico is very attached to the North American footprint in a lot of ways, culturally. In a lot of ways,
Hmm.
it's very unique. Same
Hmm.
thing with Cabo, right? It has its
Hmm.
extremes
Yeah,
in
yeah,
contrast
of course.
between haves and have-nots.
Hmm.
But you're in a country where the leadership there at the highest levels is also at an extreme. But I go
Hmm.
back to like where you grew up in London. I was just there. I think they have the most surveillance cameras of any city in the
England,
world. It is like
England as a country
massive
has got the
big
most.
brother sort of thing.
Yeah.
So just thinking about different places in the world and you've traveled, what
Hmm.
does life in Mexico feel like?
I mean, what's really interesting, I was having a conversation with someone earlier, and they're like, "Oh, Cabo, isn't there like some trouble there with crap?" Dude, I've got a half decent watch collection. Anytime I might have $20,000 on my wrist, walking around completely safe. I don't feel the need to lock my house. I've got young kids. I don't feel that anything's going to happen to them if they go to school. You know, and pardon me. And yet, there are going to be parts of the country where maybe it's not so bueno for you to walk around with a bit too much on your wrist. But that happens in any country that you're in. I think once we take off bias and actually look dispassionately at the fact that anywhere that you go, there's going to be contrast, there is going to be economic disparity. I mean, when I look at countries like the UK, look at countries like America that send so much money to other developing countries, and yet there are people living beyond the poverty line at home.
Right.
I don't know how many, and again, I'm not saying anything about the plight of the people of Ukraine. However, billions and billions of dollars was again printed that the American people are going to have to pay for to go and help a country that actually was a singular region that was having its own independent upset with another country, both of whom are in the wrong, but both of whom have got something to say that might be a little bit right. And yet, and you've got a guy who came up in the KGB that's saying, you better stop sending weapons to these people, otherwise I'm going to send my weapons to you. And the UK are like, yeah, we'll take that risk. We're going to send some. It's like, but hang on a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. Right? But we have all of these different disparities. We've got dualism that's happening in all different parts of the world. When we take off our biases and look at them, they're going to be everywhere. So are there nice places in Mexico? Yes. Are there not so nice places in Mexico? Yes. But the dynamic of that is very different here. I feel much safer here in third world country than I do in many parts of the developing world, because again, the dynamics of that danger are very different. You can get caught up in a drive-by in the streets of New York. That's not going to happen here, even though the drug industry is an integral part of the economy. So it's very, very interesting to see how those things kind of cross over and change depending on where you are. But it's a lovely place to live, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's hugely interesting. So tell me a little bit more about what's created the financial and locational freedom to be able to do this. So you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned that you started down the personal development path yourself when you were 16,
Mm-hmm.
made your first seven-figure business or deal at 18, I think you said.
19.
19. So
Mm-hmm.
was it that foundation that created your ability to?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. So, I mean, one of the concepts that I teach now is something called the flow funnel, which looks at the three different parts of ourself. We've got a physical body that moves through time and space. We have a mind that directs and receives thought and has ideas and belief systems. And we have an emotional state that is the container, the landscape against which all of that happens. And so for me, as a young man, I was focused on the mind. So Think and Grow Rich, Nightingale Conant tapes, understanding the Pareto principle, reading books like Psycho-Cybernetics, understanding principles of like Wallace D. Wattles' work, and another one of my early mentors, Stuart Goldsmith. All of these things that my mind was unassailable. If I went off to do something, I had no limiting beliefs about doing it. But I also didn't have the experience, the habits and behaviors to operate at that level. And I also didn't have the emotional capacity to play at that level. I didn't have the landscape, and so I lost it. Fast forward to today, I focus on making sure that I am emotionally attuned. My energy is able to hold the frequency of what I want to create, and that I have the belief system to support it, and that I seek counsel, guidance, and mentorship. I spent $100,000 on just one of one of the masterminds I'm in at the moment. It's $100,000, not pesos, dollars, just one. I just dropped another healthy 5-figure to go to Necker Island and hang out and mastermind with some people along with Richard Branson a few weeks ago. Constantly continuing to not only be in the right room so I can be the dumb person, be the less accomplished person, and learn those habits, get those experiences, but also sharpen my mind by having it exposed to different ideas. And so those are definitely the key ones, I would say, for me. Taking care of all the different pieces. But again, back to that thing of making sure I get advice, guidance, mentorship, leadership, and great examples of people who are ahead of me.
So that was the key there. If I wrap all that up, or the way that I understood it, and you can confirm whether I heard you right, is you started down the personal development path, all that stuff you mentioned, kind of programming yourself. 3 years later, you create it, but you didn't have the experience. So you didn't have the limiting beliefs, like you manifested this thing,
Yep.
but you didn't have the experience to hold on to it. So that leadership, that mentoring, the learning, the masterminds, that's how you've been developing your ability
Definitely.
to raise
100%.
your ability to keep what you've manifested.
Exactly.
Keep's probably the wrong word.
Yeah, but
Sustain.
we get it. Yeah,
Sustain.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the author is going to escape me at the moment, and I just moved the book off my desk. Power versus Force.
Yeah, Richard Dawkins.
Dawkins.
Yeah.
Hawkins.
Yeah, Hawkins. One of the two. Yeah, one of them's anti-God and one of them's pro-energy. Yeah. I know which one you mean.
Yeah. So Power versus Force, very energetic based. So, and he's got the logarithmic scale of energetic levels. Everything is relative. Did that enter your journey anywhere early on?
So those ideas that he shares, I'd learned earlier on, but I didn't apply them because I was an arrogant little twat that thought he knew everything, right? Because didn't have the pain of experience.
Aren't we all? Yeah.
Right. But now, I mean, one of the Danisms that I always share is that reality wraps around how you feel. Why? Because we can only experience things that are a vibrational match to our current emotional state. We can only think to the level of our current emotional state. We can only act to the level of our thinking. We can only receive to the level of our actions. And so when I have an emotional state that matches the outcome and I follow through with sustaining the beliefs and sustaining the behaviors, I will get the outcome. It's mathematically impossible that I don't. It's like in my Alchemy of Abundance workshop, that's literally what we do. We spend the weekend breaking down the pillars that allow us to be able to do that succinctly. I mean, creating outcomes, it's not magic. It's formulaic. Sometimes that formula requires work and energy, and we don't want to do that because that means that we can't blame and we can't, right? But there doesn't have to be any mystery or unpredictability about what we create. How we create is a different animal, like how we get there. But in terms of getting to the outcome, it can be predictable, it can be mathematical, it can be precise.
And repeatable, it sounds like, consistently
100%.
repeatable.
100%.
So I know one of your talking points when we got connected was the easiest way that somebody could change their life positively within a day. And I don't know if this connects to what we were just talking about, but if it does, or what I wanted to ask is, as you described how you prepare yourself energetically to live how you want to live, what does that look like for you in a daily practice?
So first and foremost, I don't believe in cookie cutter approaches. And so although I'm going to share some of what I do, I encourage everybody that's listening to find what's going to work for them. And that's going to be trial and error. I do actually have a resource on my website. We recently did a 3-day conference called Clearing Abundance Blocks. And what it is actually, over the last, couple of decades, I've been meeting and learning from and learning with different teachers to different modalities around the world. We've got an encyclopedia that you can download, which is like pages of different modalities that you can go and check out that work for different things. With the 3-day conference, which is now available as a replay, it's free. You can grab it on the website. I've actually got various of these guys, about 20 of them, to do a little masterclass on their modality so you can try it out and see if it works for yourself. Yes. So for me, I do what feels good on the day. There are non-negotiables. For me, there's always going to be some time spent in silence. I will always sprinkle that across the day. I don't believe in a morning practice alone being the thing that's going to help you. I believe in bookending your day, a morning practice and an evening practice, but most importantly, something that you can be doing over the course of the day to keep you dialed in. It's all very well and good. I have an hour-long beautiful meditation and yoga practice in the morning. Someone cuts me up on the street and I'm thrown out, my nervous system's out of whack, and I'm in my parasympathetic and I'm high. Great. The rest of the day is going to be crap. But if I have practices that will allow me to, oh, wow, I'm thrown off. Let me go and take 5 minutes. Let me go and take 2 minutes. It will keep you dialed in. So every morning I take care of three things. I take care of my spirit, I take care of my mind, and I move my body. What I do for that will change on a daily basis. So this morning, I did some meditation, I did some visualization, and I did some stretching. That was me this morning. I have since then done some breathing. I'm going to do some more after we hop off of here, just to make sure that my nervous system's nice and settled. A minute. Again, it's not, oh, I've got to take 45 minutes to go and find this girl on YouTube to do a yoga thing or whatever. A minute or two is all that you need to bring yourself back into alignment. I'll sprinkle that through the day. This evening, I've got certain affirmations that I like to do before bed. I'm going to watch my mind movie. I've got a prayer that I do every night. I've got my goals. I'm going to do some journaling. I journal in the morning as well. So those are what I tend to do. I journal morning and evening. I meditate at least once a day. I'll do some very deliberate conscious breathing multiple times during the day. Visualization will happen at some point during the day. I take care of my mind, my body, and my spirit every morning, and I lock that up in the evening.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. We went through this world where most people were suddenly working remotely. If you went from an office environment to Zoom-based work, and then now people are getting back to the office here and there. I've always been fascinated that we build these quiet spaces into offices now. Could be the breastfeeding room, for the recent mom. Things along those lines, but I haven't come across many offices that have just a space for silence, for breath, for meditation, for some kind of that 1 or 2 minute break in the middle of the day where you just want to reground yourself after a meeting, before a meeting. I would love to see that space in every office. What you mentioned, mind movie. I haven't heard that term before. What is that?
So mind movies, a friend of mine, Natalie Ledwell, I've had the opportunity to build a relationship with her for the last half a decade. She's been on the podcast. I've been interviewed by her a couple of times as well. She's a member of the Transformational Leadership Council, which I've recently been nominated to join as well, with Jack Canfield and some other thought leaders. And so she started a business that really takes a vision board and builds it into almost like a slideshow, like a moving vision board. So you can include some subliminal messages, you can include binaural beats, you can include a music that uplifts you, and slides and affirmations. It's really, really cool. You can head, I think it's mindmovies.com. You can head over to. So yeah, it's a practice that I've had since about 2016. So about 6 years now. It's a practice that I've been doing daily. And sometimes I'll build one out specifically. Currently, I'm using one of the pre-made ones that they've got because it's just doing the job for me for where I'm at right now. But if I've got something specific that I'm working on, I can build a mind movie around that. We actually, for some of our programs, we've got some pre-made ones as well that we use with binaural beats and a particular musical structure and, different affirmations and images and whatnot. But yeah, it's a really cool way to get into the unconscious and to start opening you up to the belief about achieving something.
That's really fascinating. It sounds like a visualization movie we would play for ourselves, and someone has literally made it into a movie.
And you can build your own. I mean, the software allows you, and it takes you through how you can, go and get the pictures and build the affirmations and so on and so forth. I mean, for me, we've got particular processes that we've got around helping people build their mind movie or vision board or whatever that's built around their ideal life blueprint. But it's a great way, especially if you use it when you're closer to data in terms of your brainwaves. So just after you've woken up or just before you go to sleep. You can also do different breathing work in order to sort of really settle your nervous system and open you up to it. And it's really freaky how many times I've actually found myself in a scene that literally is an example of like literally the scenery of what was in the mind movie, right? Or little things that I wanted that just freakily show up. Like I remember I once had it's going back a while, I had a particular car that I wanted, and someone walked into the office that I had at the time, and he's like, "Oh, my sister's selling her one. Literally, do you want to buy it?" It's like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." Like that, creepily, right? It's really funny how it works out. It's quite magical.
What was the time gap there?
3 days, 2 days, 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating to think about time, space, energy. One of the things that really struck me with that Power versus Force book is this concept of infinite wisdom, that
Hmm.
if wisdom would be one word for it, that we
Hmm.
can all tap into, that we're all naturally connected to,
Hmm.
maybe tune into would be a better way to say it,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that
yeah.
it's infinite also in terms of time, that
Hmm.
you can reach back in
Hmm.
history for insight,
Hmm.
as well as forward.
Yeah, I mean, Wallace D. Wattles in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, refers to it as thinking stuff. Um, when you start to overlay that with the ideas of stuff like, Eckhart Tolle and the Power of Now, and start crossing it off with things like timeline therapy that people do as an NLP based tool that you can use to literally heal yourself now by going back and changing your emotional relationship to something that happened in the past. It's really awesome when we actually start to let go of some of these ideas that lock us in a fixed experience of what life is and opens us up to experiencing something different.
Yeah, it really opens those dimensions. Have you seen or experienced? There's another. I think this may also be an NLP tool, and or one that Tony Robbins uses. That idea of going back to literally a mind movie.
Hmm.
The idea of in your mind sitting in a theater, watching a
Yeah.
movie, and there's sort of this zooming in, zooming out that you can
Hmm.
do in terms of literally putting yourself into the movie in your mind and
Hmm.
cranking up the volume and the color and the vibrancy and
Hmm.
and your visceral experience of it. And then you can go the other way as well, as sort of pulling yourself back into the theater, into the back row, into the projection room,
Hmm.
dialing down the volume, and just associating or disassociating yourself with what you're playing through your mind, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I use a variation of that myself. Also, if I've got something that I'm really stressed about or that I'm anxious about, I'll play the movie in my mind and change details to make it comic. I'll make it into a cartoon. I'll put clown hats on people and just change the mental association with it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, T. Robbie's got some awesome tools around the mind, and that's definitely one. And I would say it does tie into those same principles that Richard speaks about in the book. That really just reminds us that we are a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And if we actually make the conscious choice to step into that power, we can do a lot more with our lives.
Debating whether I wanted to ask this. It's kind of cliche, but it's one that just it pops up for me all the time. Well, like Elon Musk, right? I think he's a person that says he believes that the evidence says, and his intuition says, that we live in a computer simulation. Or
Hmm.
if you think about, this was made in a movie called The Matrix, right?
Yeah,
It wasn't necessarily a computer simulation, but a different reality, a reality
of course.
wrapped around another reality.
Hmm.
How does that fit into your experience or your belief of how energy ties together to our what we experience in this physical vessel and world?
Have you seen the film Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds?
No.
Look it up.
Oh yeah, yeah. The recently it's kind of he's like a video
Yeah,
game character.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. And so, what is real? Welcome to the Valley of the Real, in the words of Morpheus. Even if you look at what that film Free Guy kind of tells us is the experience of what artificial intelligence is going through. Like, there's no differentiation. It doesn't know that it's not a constructed system. And if we look at some of the ideas and stories that are shared by the ancients, we were constructed too. Whether it was, a white guy that has a beard that sits on a big silver throne in a silver city, who knows what it really looked like. But the fact of the matter is that we probably didn't come from nothing and nowhere. And even when you look at the evidence behind evolution and the fact that there are leaps that have happened that can't be explained purely by evolution, the science is there, right? Again, I say all this against the thing of there's a lot of stuff we're not going to know and we don't know, and we probably aren't going to know as long as we're still in meat suits. But there are some things that just make sense as high probabilities. And the idea that there is a layer of reality that we're experiencing that isn't the total layer of reality is what the mystics speak about when we talk about returning to completed state, when we talk about moving into nirvana, going to heaven, moving beyond this level of the game that we experience when we have death, right? Physical death. Consciousness exists outside of the body. They're measuring it and showing that, look at string theory, not string theory, quantum entanglement, right? And the fact that our consciousness is entangled, even though we live in different meat suits. It's like different computers connected in the internet, right? The signal is still going, but they're different handsets. And so I agree that there is a lot of evidence to support that this is a layer of reality and that there are other layers. Even if you look at what we're building out now with the metaverse and building out now with artificial intelligence, we're actually in the process of creating a new layer of reality. And those levels of consciousness, which is what artificial intelligence is, we breathe life into it through code, just the way that the stories talk about, God breathing life into man, giving us the code. And here we are having our experience and then forgetting about our creator. Why can't we say that artificial intelligence is having the same? And that will continue to build, just as those that came before us were probably built by something else, and on and on and on back into infinity. But I think it's a very interesting conversation. And I also think it's a pretty pointless conversation if it's not supporting us in making empowered choices that lead to us having an experience in this simulation or this life that we're living that feel good.
I suppose it is the age-old question, those big questions of how and why and who, which are really fascinating to ponder, especially as you describe layer upon layer. But at the same time, in daily reality, what good is it doing you? Other than maybe realizing back to where we started that there is infinite possibility for yourself.
Exactly. Is it supporting? I always ask myself this question: does this conversation, this engagement, this interaction, this film, this book, this podcast, does it feel good to me in a way that doesn't infringe on life feeling good for others? And is it taking me closer or further away from my conscious choice about how I want to live my life? And depending on how it fits those, how it responds to those questions, I'll follow through with it or I won't.
Right.
And so, and that's really what it comes down to. It feels good at times to ponder these questions, but is that taking away from me actually doing actions that are going to move me forward? In that case, I'm not going to ponder it now, I'm a bit late, right? And that's just basically how I deal with it. But I do believe Elon's probably onto something, and he's managed to work out the game to become the richest person in the world. So he probably has got a few nuggets in the head of his. Maybe worth listening at least and exploring and considering what he's got to say, even if we don't agree.
Sure. Right back to where we started, right? Sometimes the guy sounds pretty crazy to me, and other times he sounds pretty brilliant. And those two are often, very closely
very close to each other in the same sentence.
Exactly. Well, and what you just described makes perfect sense. But you used the word integrity earlier, right? So that sort of test of, is it moving me forward, and does it feel good without infringing on anyone else? Then yes, it's in alignment. It's in integrity with how you want to live.
Exactly.
So just one other thing I wanted to tie back to where we started as well with your Asperger's, and you had a period of time being undiagnosed, and now that you realize that, how does that show up for you now that you understand it, and living the way you live? Where does it tie in?
Well, I was really blessed that the person who caught the diagnosis, and I've since had it, second and third opinion or whatever, different tests and whatever. So I know that it wasn't a misdiagnosis, but she was a woman that specialized in working with adults with autism in some way, shape, or form. And so I got a lot of tools from her to be able to make the most of my diagnosis and actually leverage it. And so, it's a gift for me now. It's not even an hindrance. It was only a hindrance when I didn't have a conscious relationship to it. Now I can ask for support. Okay, look, guess what? That's going to be a challenge for me. Like my team, like they know I've got a certain bandwidth for certain things. And so they support me in making sure that they pick those up. It's just, when we know ourselves, we can start to make the choices that are going to be supportive for us, and we can ask for the support. We can ask for the understanding. There's some stuff, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth about. So if I let you know from the get-go, it's like, hey, you might find my foot here instead of on the floor sometimes, whatever. So yeah, it's been a gift, and it's been a gift to know, and it's continues to be a gift that keeps on giving to me.
Is it a gift? That's amazing. Is it a gift in the sense of fear, or a lesser degree of fear than someone without Asperger's may have?
It depends. I mean, for me, for example, like anything systemized, I'll learn it. But the reason why I had anxiety for most of my life up until that point is because if something's not systemized, I have a meltdown. So guess what? If something's not systemized and I can see it's not systemized, I ask for some support to deal with it. And if something's systemized, tag me and I've got it, right? But I didn't have that before. Like I said, literally saved my life because of the way that my brain functions. I don't make impulsive decisions, and so I was able to stop and make certain choices a different way. But ultimately, I would say those are my superpowers. Everyone that I know is on the spectrum has got a superpower, and if you are on the spectrum, look to your superpowers and just ask for support for yourself in the areas where you don't have as much aptitude. You'll be okay.
Yeah, there's two things in there that have been huge for me. One is just awareness as we grow and we experience, starting to have awareness of, in the case of that example, where are my strengths and weaknesses in Asperger's, and then just being able to ask for help. I don't know why that's so hard for a lot of guys, a lot of people in general.
We're trained not to, and my son's 18 months old, and I make a really, really big thing of encouraging communication. If he having a tantrum, talk to me, kid. What's going on? What do you need? Blah, blah, blah. Hugging him, kissing him, allowing him to experience, but at the same time, I throw him around and I already have him kicking balls around and, letting him have this spectrum of experience that's going to allow him to have a holistic, whole, expanded life versus caught in these containers about what it is to be a man.
That's amazing. Well, you're gonna have a blast with that. Congratulations! I didn't realize he was so young. He's gonna have a fantastic journey with you as a dad.
Oh, thank you, bud.
Well, where can we follow up, Daniel? You mentioned your website and some of the material you've got out there.
Best place is the website, Michael. That's where everything is. We've got free resources. The events page has got, I do regular stuff on social media. We've got them normally tagged on the events page so you can see when they are. We do in-person events. We've got a free resources page. Like I said, we've got some really cool stuff on there. Links to my books and the podcasts that I do, and anything cool happening is there. And any of the free resources you grab will pop you on the website, on the email list. It's not one of those email lists that's trying to get you to buy something for $9.97 every week. It's literally, hey, I've just been on this really cool podcast with this guy, Michael. You should check it out. Hey, I just wrote this article. Hey, this is something that I was thinking about that might be of service to you. That's what our email list is all about.
Fantastic. I appreciate that. So what's the website? And we'll get links up to it as well.
Yeah, dreamwithdan.com. Dreamwithdan.com. Really easy.
We'll definitely get links up to that, the free resources, and where to follow you. And I appreciate your philosophy on the email. As was showing up here today, you've had such an amazing journey. You've embraced abundance in so many ways, and I appreciate you taking the time to just serve and to share and be here and to show up as you do through the digital means. So
thank you, sir.
I appreciate you. Thanks so much for your time, Daniel. Have an amazing weekend, and hope we'll get some of the Mastery Tribe headed your way to just learn more from you and keep following. You got a long way to go.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, guys, as I said, sort of going in, I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Dan is a funny, great guy to talk to, and a lot of great stuff going on. Make sure you go check him out, dreamwithdan.com. We'll get links up to that and his other material in the show notes for this one at men2mastery.com/111. Yeah, like I said, I've personally tuned into a good bit of Dan's material. He's got a bunch of stuff out there for free. He's got Instagram lives, I think twice a week. Good dude doing good work. So make sure to check that out. And make sure you jump back in here next episode. Cole Rogers of School of Man. So Cole is a graduate of the Mark Divine Seal Fit Kokoro program, which is just epic and badass in itself. Not so many people in the world have successfully gone through that, but the takeaways and the empowerment and development from that program are literally life-changing from everyone I've ever talked to. Moreover, Cole's own experience there is extremely unique, as you will hear from really anyone else who has gone through Kokoro before. And he talks about not only the event, but that experience I'm alluding to within the event that have led him on the mission he is on with School of Man, and doing some similar but different approach to the long-term development, self-development of men. School of Man Awesome work Cole's doing over there. Look forward to bringing you that one next in episode 112. All right. Until then, hey, gratitude, abundance, get back out there and get after some of that this week.